Previously on Break the Cycles. We made the final stretch in Central America and boarded Starate in Panama to cross the Darien Gap. After 3 days on the water, we were finally dropped off in a very small town called Turbo on the coast of Colombia. Once our bikes were unloaded and paperwork finalized, we left the immigration center where we were dropped off and headed on our way. The boys and I decided to split up and do our own thing for a while since we have been riding together for several months. I found a host in the town of Turbo, and his name was Jair. He actually came out and led me back to his place from a local grocery store. At first I thought it was unnecessary until I started to follow him. And as you can see, the houses, they're not labeled. The walkways and the streets, they're not labeled. There was zero chance I would have figured out where to go. My host Jair is a school teacher in a 7-day Adventist private school. It's a church private school. And it was in a local town, right down the road, a couple miles. And I asked him if I could visit the school and talk to the local students. He agreed. Now, Jair mentioned that I can go much later in the day instead of the morning when he goes to work. And this way I can sleep in, get rested, sort my stuff out, and then head over whenever I'm ready. The school was only 1.5 miles away, but the roads were absolutely atrocious. There were huge potholes everywhere. The road turned to dirt without warning, and there were demonstrators in the road. I had to wait for that. It took a good long time for that 1.5 mile. And finally I got to the school. The kids are super excited to see me. I mean, this is a very, very rural town, so they probably have not seen any adventure motorcyclists come to the school. They might have seen them coming off the boat, but probably not to the school. Much less an American, and probably even less an Asian American. But I really enjoy myself talking to the students, taking some videos with them, and they had a kick out of it. The next day, I thanked Jair and left for Sincelejo. It was a pretty uneventful ride, and there was just a lot of farmland and a lot of crops along the way. When I got to town, I met up with the host that I looked up there as well, and his name was Elliot. Right? But this was a bit of a culture shock. Now, Elliot tells me that he can host me because his sister is in college, and I am able to use her bed, the sister's bed. Now, I'm assuming that means that his sister's room I'll be staying in, which is fine, right? When I got there, there was no running water. So I had to shower with a bucket and whatever water collecting they have. But that's not the culture shock. I actually did this growing up before, and that's not like the big culture shock. What was the culture shock was that both my host and his older brother are sleeping in the same room in a bunk bed. Okay. And get this, the sister sleeps also in the same room on an air mattress on the floor. So this is what he meant when he said, my sister is away and you can sleep in her bed. That is the size of the room. There's no AC. The middle of summer with a fan going. To be fair, Jair didn't have AC either, but I had my own room and bed. But Elliot was very cool. He's a cool guy. He took me around town, casually offered me some cocaine. Colombian hospitality. But the accommodation was just, it was not acceptable. And I didn't sleep much at all. Given how hot and uncomfortable it was, and of course you have multiple people in the room, I didn't sleep well at all. And I ended up getting up early the following day and then left. I rode north for a couple hours and arrived in Cartagena and found another host, Daniela. I made sure this time to ask if I was actually going to get my own bed. And Daniela, of course, assured me that I was going to have my own bed and my own room, but there was no AC. Now, the road to Cartagena from Sincelejo was a lot sketchier than I would have thought. There were so many villagers in the middle of the road trying to stop traffic, ask for money. Now, some of them are just waving their hands, and some of them have robes. Some of them are aggressive with some stuff to throw at you. I mean, this was a riot. It's not really a big deal if it was like, a little bit, maybe 2 or 3, but this was literally every quarter mile. There's somebody there out trying to ask for money. So I cannot really stop every 30 seconds. And I think it would be kind of dangerous if I try to stop because there's a crowd of people and some of them are like grown ass men. So like I don't know how safe that was. So I had to ride around them so I don't stop because I didn't feel very comfortable stopping. And this first group that I encountered, from the initial yelling, there's ropes that they lay across on the ground. And you can also see the guy in the back in the red, right? This guy in the back in the red, as I approach, he got ready to throw the bottle that he had in his hand. And as I rode by, he did throw it at me because I didn't stop. So, like, that was very dangerous. The second group was also pretty aggressive. They were standing in the middle of the road, trying to stop me. They had stuff in their hand to throw, but they didn't do anything. It's very unsettling, very uncomfortable. This third group had a rope as well, stuff in their hand. I remember the girl in the back also had like some kind of water bottle that's filled or whatever, and they were throwing it at me as well as I rode by. Then this next group, I only saw last minute, but because I was behind this big truck, and then I see them on the side, and you can see in the video, they were throwing whatever they had in the can at me as I was passing by. Was this dangerous? This was very dangerous. I'm glad nothing happened, and I did make it to Cartagena. The following day, I visited the city when Daniela went to work. This has got to be one of the most gorgeous city I have ever been in. I mean, the Spanish colonial influence is so evident in all the buildings, the color, the cobblestone city streets. Man, this is a beautiful city. I left Daniela on the following day and rode north to Barranquilla and then to Santa Marta. The road to Santa Marta is much more civilized. There are many police on bikes along the way. The roads were much better, well paved, and I did not see any locals in the middle of the road on this leg of going to Santa Marta. Now, a lot of the tolls, especially for Central America and South America, the motorcycle can pass on the right side. There's like a narrow path that you go by and you don't pay for anything. Just like it's free for motorbikes. But the DR650 is about as big of a bike as you want to take passing through it because some of these are super narrow. Now, when I arrived at Santa Marta to meet my host, Andreas, I was surprised that my room, not only do I get my own room and my own bed, he has AC. Man, I have not had AC since I landed in Colombia, and I have to say, I was super happy. After my arrival, my host told me that I absolutely have to check out Minca, and this is a ride that I absolutely have to look. And I did not put up any resistance. The host told me that it would be a lot of rural roads and it's not very well paved. I figure it's no problem. It's only 20 miles up and then 20 miles down. And it's a pretty common visited attraction because Minca is supposedly very popular. So I'm thinking it can't be like Volcantalica in Nicaragua, but let me be safe. So I unloaded my gear. I took off the panniers, stripped the bike, just threw some stuff in the top box that I needed. And the bike was only like 380 pounds, not like 500 pounds for me to like wrangle around. And then I could do the off-road with a lot more confidence. The following day I left and then rode Minca on my own. It was a paved road until you passed the main town and into the back roads. Then the road started to turn into like a dirt path, follow some of the partially paved concrete tracks that I've seen in Guatemala or Nicaragua. It's very, very similar, like concrete tracks. And then there was a few muddy sections, but it wasn't bad because the tracks were double wide and I had like a lot of space to just kind of avoid the problems. I could just like take a different line and it was fine. The further I rode in, the terrain started to change and the road became very, very steep. But the good thing is, the majority of section and hill climb are still partially paved, and there was absolutely like zero traffic. So I was like riding in there. It was getting kind of dicey, but it wasn't bad. So I'm just like, meh, whatever. But then the further I went in, the narrower the roads became, and then suddenly I couldn't avoid a lot of the muddy sections, so I started having to ride through a lot of these muddy sections, and it was kind of sketch. As I continue inward, the road kind of just disappeared. And now it's literally just a muddy single track up the side of this mountain. You can see in the video that the road is steep, but trust me, it is a lot steeper than what you can see in the video. Like, it was a very steep uphill going. There are also tons of washout throughout the tracks. The more I went in, there's more washouts. And this is very common because it's not paved and you're going up a mountain road. If it rains, it's going to create all kinds of washout situations on the track. So it's not unexpected, but it made the muddiness and the washout made the ride very, 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 very difficult. I definitely would not have made it if all my gears were still on the back of the bike. I probably would have dropped it 100 times and then gave up, had to go back downhill. I don't know. But it gets better. The more I rode in, the muddier the section became, and then randomly there was paved sections, but then these paved sections were so poorly maintained that I was worried about slipping off the paved section and then like losing traction. I was like, it's almost better just to be like muddy dirt road, almost. And I survived all that, and then I rode a little bit further in, and I turned this corner, and I just sat there, and I was like, what the fuck is this? This was literally just a massive, massive, huge mud pit where the road used to be. Like, I was just sat there like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? Even the locals were like hanging out there, like taking like a few minutes, like getting ready before they rode through it. I mean, like, I eventually summoned enough courage to ride through it. Like the locals, too. Feet down, chicken walked it the entire way. I have no shame at all. Everybody did the same thing. Foot down, chicken walk it the entire way. I finally made it to the top of Minca. This is not really the top because this is where most people would consider the viewing point of the lookout, but this is not really the top. There is technically the top of the trail, which is here. So there's a lot of overgrowth that are happening here. So you can't really see anything even when you're on this viewing platform. The only saving grace was because I had my drone and I was able to capture the view from behind the wall of trees. If that was not the case, I would have been really unhappy because I struggled and got up to the top and you couldn't see anything. I mean, the overgrowth was outrageous. So I probably should have turned around and head down there and just call it a day, but I was feeling like, making some really bad decisions. So I continued the trail and followed the trail up the mountain. The road didn't get worse, but honestly, I don't know how it can be worse because, that was terrible coming up here. So I continued and it got very, very steep, and then I passed by this coffee vanilla farm on my way, and then after the coffee vanilla farm, suddenly there was like all this foot traffic, and I was like, what the heck? I haven't seen like a soul for like most of the ride, maybe one person, maybe like two max, but now there's like tons of foot traffic of people walking around. I was like, what is going on? So on the final turn up, I finally made it to the top, and it's a very, very steep hill going up. I know it doesn't seem like it in the video, but it is super, super steep. I mean, it was definitely like a 45-degree slant, like going up this hill. And then I arrived at the top, and there was no more road, and there was some stairs on the side, but it was some patio. And then I see like all these laundry hanging, and I realized, oh shit, I'm in like somebody's backyard. So I was like, oops, turned around, went back down. So when I rode back, I took another path trying to go back so I don't backtrack the same way because I didn't want to ride back the same thing, hoping that maybe I'll get like better road conditions doing something else. And it was just as bad. Like the other way was just as bad. the muddy washout. It was like ass clenching ride all the way down the mountain. When I got back to Santa Marta, I was super tired. I was about like 5 miles away from reaching my host's house when I got pulled over by two Colombian police officers on a Yamaha dual sport. It was like a 250 or something, or maybe a 125. Well, anyway, it was a super small bike. You got these two guys on there. It looks really funny. But anyways, I got off the bike and the officer proceeded to ask me to empty my pockets. I took everything out, and then they opened my top box and they looked through everything in my top box. I was taking stuff out of the top box, laying it out for them to see, and eventually I had to open one of my safety like locations where I hid like $2,000 like emergency cash. I just keep it on me. Look, if I absolutely need it or things, whatever, it's like I leave it somewhere on the bike. And I open it, and they see this two like just fresh cash in a stack, like in on a Ziploc bag, and I just sighed in such defeat because I was like, I know how shady law enforcement can be, especially in like developing countries. And I just figured that's it. I just lost 2 grand. They're gonna jack me this $2,000. The guys looked at me. I looked at them. It was like, I'm like, are you gonna really screw me over? Like in right here, and there's like all this traffic going by. I'm looking at them. They're looking at me. And then like a couple seconds later, they're like, okay. And then they turn around, got on their bike, and rode off. And I was just like, whew. And I was just like standing on the side of the road with all my stuff like everywhere. And then I packed everything back and then went back to my host's house. I was like, oh my god, my heart was like. Uh, the following day, I did some maintenance on my bike and like really washed off all the mud from Minca and took a break. I had the idea of riding all the way to Cabo de la Villa, which is the northern point of Colombia. I looked online and people said that the road up north was not very safe to travel alone. Having experienced the road to Cartagena, I was very wary about doing this solo. So I hit up Winham, and he just happened to also be in Santa Marta. And we met up for lunch and decided that we will trek up to Cabo the next day together. Next time, I visit Cabo de la Villa and Valle du Par, one of my favorite places in Colombia.